The fake news channel Faux News has run an article about the news last week that somebody had tweeted. The Taliban, all of them together, plus every Al Qaeda fighter in the world, do not pose the threat to the United States that the Trump sycophants do. That was not the first time that anybody has ever said it, and it won't be the last time either, because it is true. They did ask if the person that tweeted that, they asked them if they wanted to comment on what they said. They asked them would they comment publicly, and then the person emailed the following: the Taliban and Al Qaeda are among the most vile, dangerous, violent extremist organizations in the world, and they pose a threat that must be taken very seriously and actively combated. They do not, however, pose an existential threat to the United States or our way of life. Trump and his sycophants have, with the support of one of America's most dangerous enemies, actively sought to undermine democracy in America. The coup attempt on January 6th and the propagation of the big lie are an example of this. Their efforts to suppress the vote are an example of this also. Trump's active obstruction of justice is an example of this, and should they succeed, democracy in America will be gutted and our way of life ended, our values undermined, and our standing in the world destroyed. They may yet succeed. As a consequence, the threat they pose is far greater to the United States as a fucking whole. Um, further, Trump, through his own ignorance and self-serving spread of lies, is responsible, according to credible estimates, for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans due to his botching of the COVID-19 pandemic. No terror group could ever hope to achieve such a level of damage. Finally, Trump and Pompeo helped orchestrate the release of 5,000 Taliban fighters and accelerated the handover of Afghanistan to the Taliban. Consequently, they have also aided and abetted that terror organization with their misguided, short-sighted policies. I should add that by perpetuating lies that have led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands and by promoting lies that have undermined democracy, Foe was actively complicit in this. Um, this article did quote the first portion of the response, but due no doubt to space requirements online, it admitted what somebody had said about how Faux News is culpable for the damage that Trump and his sycophants have done, as well as my reference to Trump's role in shoring up the Taliban and thereby accelerating the fall of Afghanistan to the extremist group. Something that you don't hear much about on Faux News is how the U.S. law enforcement sees the domestic violent extremists who have supported it and have been encouraged by Trump. I could point out domestic extremists posing a greater threat to the U.S. than do the foreign violent extremists like the Taliban and Al Qaeda, according to the Department of Homeland Security, a view that they also held when Trump's team was in place there. The Trump-appointed FBI Director Christopher Wray agrees, and he has pointed to the special threat posed by the white supremacists, meaning Trump supporters, and that while the threat posed by foreign terrorists is real, it has been vastly overstated in the wake of 9/11. We should not have treated those terrorists as being analogous to prior international enemies of the modern era, like the Nazis or the Soviets. They instead pose a more limited kind of risk than was presented, a risk that, despite their rhetoric, was not to our society or institutions broadly, but was instead sporadic and opportunist. We are better off responding to them with specialized counter-terror measures, expanded intelligence capabilities, hardened assets, and greater public-private coordination in the identification of, preparation for, and reaction to threats. Although I was tempted to, I did not mention those points in the email because I doubted that the Faux article would have space in its article to cover all the evidence and sound analysis by experts that make it absolutely clear that while the Taliban and Al Qaeda are utterly repugnant and a threat that should not be minimized, the damage already done by Trump and many of his sycophants and the imminent threat of the further damage they pose is greater than foreign terror groups currently pose or seem likely to in the immediate future. Speaking of any imminent threats, the rising daily COVID tolls driven by Trump's partisan rejection of science is certainly one. The fact that Trump and his sycophants include many high GOP officials are defending the January 6th attack on the Capitol, and they're continuing to perpetuate the lies about the fairness of the last election, and actively working to try to rig future elections all drive home the point that the threat from the former squatter has not receded. For these reasons alone, it is irrefutable that Trump and many of the people seeking to advance his agenda or claim it for themselves are poised to have a greater negative impact on Americans and the country as a whole than the foreign extremist groups. However, I hasten to add that I was not and am not suggesting that all Trump supporters are bad as members of the Taliban or Al Qaeda. Technically, they are. Case in point, Many Trumpists still want to disenfranchise people of color, overturn elections, obstruct justice, egg on violent domestic extremists, canoodle with the foreign enemies, and abuse power in our Constitution. Some of them have moved on from the errors of their past. I doubt that. A few of them, though, for example, believe any longer that we should inject Clorox into our veins, and not many on the Trumpy right and now many on the Trumpian right are instead promoting the benefits of ingesting a livestock dewormer. Now, if you like the video, give the video a like and subscribe to my channel RBW King, and also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And thanks for listening.